Hello, everybody. It's Stephen and Walter here for another episode of So Chatty. You look like you're falling off the screen.
Means I have to sit closer to you.
We'll get away from the smell. Anyways, so like I said, welcome to another episode of So Chatty, episode 88 for January the 20th, 2023. That's what I want to say. And today's topic is about embroidery machine color selection of your threads. This was an idea Walter came up with. Of course, he came down here all prepared to do something totally different because,
I had forgotten what
like
it said.
any almost near senior citizen, he forgets what we're talking about, what day it is, what his name is.
Who knows?
Yeah, welcome to my world. Okay, so what have you been working on? Well, he came down with stuff, but he thought that was what the episode
Let me
was
see.
about.
I undid the drain today so that we could fish out something I felt drop down.
Not my fault. I didn't drop anything down the drain. I just want you to know that because the way he just said it and the way he put on his little looks on it was like he did it. He did it. No. He did it. It was an idiot move. He's an idiot. And then apparently after he took the gooseneck, opened up the gooseneck to get this little piece that dropped down there out, his little fingers weren't long enough to get in there. I didn't think he had that short of stubby fingers. Well, I don't know, maybe you do. But anyways, we got that out. Found some other things in there that was kind of interesting too. Didn't know about those. Whatever. Luckily, none of them moved. So anyways, that disaster avoided. Okay, so I've been working on a few things. Well, you've been working on a few things too. You've been trying to figure out what I was going to give you for your birthday.
Yeah. I spent a lot of time researching that. So
Yeah, nothing's easy. So what's Walter getting for his birthday? What did you order?
a dash cam.
He ordered a dash cam.
And then today I looked at the site and they had a big sale on.
Oh.
And they had everything on sale except for the one I ordered.
Well, it figures. Figures. But anyways, well, now you'll be able to replay what I see when I'm in the car that you don't seem to see, like transport trucks in front of you that are cutting you off and all kinds of things. Yeah, whatever. Okay, I've been working on a few things, so just quickly, these are things I'll talk about next week on the Idiot Quilter in more detail, or I may have talked about this one. Actually, this one's coming up. Let me get it here. Already talked about it on Idiot Quilter if you saw that. So this was no, I didn't talk about this on Idiot Quilter. I talked about it on Stephanie and Steven's Sew Along because this was the pattern that we picked out, but this is not the pattern because I decided, those of you that were on Wednesday, that I was going to do the pattern instead of 10-inch squares that make the half square triangles. I was going to do it in a couple of charm packs, 5-inch, which means I need double the number, right? Only thing was I discovered that they said that you were supposed to have so many squares in light, so many squares in dark. Well, you had to have a lot of contrast between your lights and darks if you want to see the stars. If you look at this closely, there are 4 stars in this quilt. However, because the contrast isn't severe enough, you don't really see them the way you should. So I went back to square one and got 10-inch squares and redid it, and it works much better. And we've explained that to everybody on who are taking part in the sew along. But then I had all these half square triangles, right? So I thought, well, what the heck? I'm not going to waste them. So I just put them together in this configuration for this small. What'd that work out to? I think it's actually a twin size it works out to. Now, this is just the top. It hasn't been layered or put on loosey yet. Maybe next week I'll get to that and get it quilted. But I think it's pretty. But I call it hidden stars because there are 4 stars there, but you have to really study it to figure them out. Walter's studying it now because he's looking for mistakes. Well, guess what?
I can't find mistakes because the whole thing's a mistake.
Yeah, well, I was going to say that, but okay, fine. Glad you got it. I kind of like it. I think it's kind of pretty. And I think
it's the non-symmetrical quilt.
Actually, it is symmetrical. If you look at it closely, it is actually symmetrical.
Well, it does sort of.
Yeah, well, it does. It is. It was on purpose.
Weird pattern.
But it's a symmetrical pattern. Yeah.
Well, this block looks like it's too low.
Wait.
because you've got another
Yeah,
white
I know.
there.
Yeah, well, it's
Okay,
asymmetric.
fine.
There's symmetry to it. It's my symmetry. Everybody's a critic. Whatever. So I'm also working on, and because today we're going to talk about embroidery threads, I thought I'd show you a little bit of this. It's in pieces. This is what's called the New Beauty Table Runner. It is a variation of a New York Beauty. It is all done in the hoop. This is only half of the blocks. There's 12 blocks I have to
When
make.
you say in the hoop, it's in the hoop of the embroidery machine.
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
in the
okay.
hoop of the embroidery machine. I guess I should have specified that for
Yeah.
people who don't.
Embroider.
Yeah, whatever. Okay. So yeah, it's being all done in my embroidery machine. All right. And you've seen me talk or heard me talk before about in the hoop projects and things like that. I really like doing them. Now there's 6 more blocks that have to be created, and then these all get sewn together, and then you basically layer it because the quilting's already done on it, and you put in a strategic grid of quilting along sort of in the seam, what do they call it, stitch in the ditch kind of a thing that just holds the layers together, and you have yourself a nice table runner. I'm thinking of this as a gift when we go out west, and if we end up seeing my brother, I'm thinking about giving it to them as a, gift. I'm not lugging a quilt out there for them. I don't even know if they're quilt worthy. They may not even be table runner worthy. I don't know. Who knows? But this is what I'm doing. So yeah, and this is a thing here too in what we're going to talk about today on how you pick colors for your in the hoop embroidery, and we'll talk about the fact that files that you download to put into your embroidery machine do tell you what colors to use with each thing. However, you may not have those colors, and what do you do then? Or you may not have exactly the same shade because
sometimes the embroidery files show you colors that you didn't expect to be in the embroidery.
That's right.
Place.
So it does get a little confusing, especially for people who have just got into machine embroidery when they try one of these projects, and it can be very discouraging, but it doesn't need to be. And we're going to talk about that today as well. But right now, before we get into that, I just want to remind you, Craft and Chat is coming up very quickly. The first Wednesday of February is actually the first day of February, February the 1st. So that's 1 week from this coming Wednesday. So I will have the links for that. There'll be a link today, the Zoom link, in the show notes for today's episode, and it will be in everything I put up next week as well. So that's coming up fast. Hard to believe. Where does the time go? Okay, let's get on to the main event, and let's talk about embroidery threads, and specifically about color. Not so much about specific brands or specific types, because essentially you can use any kind of quality thread in your embroidery machine. It does not have to say on the spool embroidery thread. You can use Aurifil if you're, the stuff you use for piecing. If you're an Aurifil user, or Wonderfil, or King Tut, or any of the other brands that are out there. Now we have our preferences, and
well, see, some of the threads that you get, like some of the ones that are specifically for embroidery, tend to have a sheen to them.
Yeah.
So they look a little nicer.
For example, this is Floriani. I started with Floriani, and that's why, and I have a lot of Floriani. In fact, I can kind of show you how much Floriani I have.
And you can see in the drawers that they have, like, you can't see it so well that wrapped up, but you can see in the drawers that they have a specific shine to them.
Yeah. And by the way, this is only half of my supply. I have more drawers below that and some drawers above it. And I sort of keep them organized by colors, sort of, in there. But I have a lot of Floriani. And that's because I started with it, and Walter's bought me boxed sets of it before, and I buy thread all the time for this, and I keep up a supply. And we're going to actually talk a little bit about organizing them too today in passing. But yeah, that gives you an idea. However, you don't have to buy Floriani. And you might wonder what the cost is of Floriani. Floriani runs where I get it at I think $6.99
Canadian dollars.
Canadian dollars for how much on is this? 1,300.
Okay, yeah, it's 13.
I think it says 1,300,
or is it 1,000?
might be 1,000. I think it's 1,000 on
Yeah,
these. 1,300 Zoraphil.
1,300 Zoraphil. Those are 1,000
meters.
Mm-hmm.
That is what we're talking about on that. But it's my thread of choice. I like it. I like the sheen on it, the shine on it. It does a really good job. But I have tried some others. This is Madeira. Madeira isn't easy for me to get around here because a lot of dealers don't handle this, but I did find one, and I think I ordered it online. I think it came from someplace out west.
No, you bought it from Super Punch.
Was it Super Punch I bought it from?
Yeah.
Montville?
Montville.
Oh yeah, that's right. I did.
You have to order it right from their factory, though. Like,
Yeah.
there's montville.ca, but then they actually have a wholesale distributor called Super Punch, and they will sell to individuals through there.
You have to have sort of a membership registration, but it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. I haven't gone onto that site in quite a while.
Yeah, and they're quite reasonable for, that's a large cone.
Yeah, this is a large cone. I think I bought about 8 colors. This is a 5,000 meter cone. And someone's going to ask me about the weight of these threads. Floriani is, I believe, a 40 weight.
Yes, it is.
And Madeira, I think, is probably about the same. I'm just looking on here to see. It's hard to read their type. No, yeah, it's a 40 weight as well. You can get different ones in different weights as well. However, you want to be careful because then that gets you into the whole thing of what size needle.
Now, these threads that you have just shown, the Floriani and this one, are both polyester threads.
Yes.
Whereas you can get older versions of embroidery thread are often rayon. And the rayon's okay, but apparently rayon tends to fade over time, whereas the polyester thread doesn't, is more resistant to fading.
So it's whatever, and there's other different brands too. There's something like Aston Anderson, or no, I don't know if that's it, something like that. And there's a few others.
There's like Gun Old, and there's Gun Old, and there's all kinds of other kinds of thread. I can't think of them all right now. And there's Glide. You can use Glide as embroidery thread.
I have a lot of
Glide. People where you will use Glide, the same thread that people use for quilting. So, and I use an inexpensive brand that I get from Montville. So, which I can show.
Sure.
I buy these from Montville. They sell both 1,000 meter cones, which is the same size as the Floriani, or you can buy this one. It's a 5,000 meter cone, and it is $5.99.
Yeah, it's a lot cheaper for 5,000.
$5.99 Canadian for that.
Yeah.
Right. And if you buy the 1,000 meter cone, I think they charge $2.99 for it. So,
which is a really good price. And you'll notice that this thread also has a sheen to it.
It's a 40 weight. It has a nice sheen to it. I use it in all my embroidery. I really like it. I have sometimes, I bought all their colors that they have available, which is 170. But some of their colors are what I'm a bit lacking, like in their purples. So I sometimes substitute. I have a few purple Florianis I substitute. Well, I'll mix this Floriani with this, and I can't tell which is Floriani and which is this.
And I've never had a problem mixing the threads. So like that's probably a question some people are going to ask. Well, if you're started, you're working on a piece and you don't have the right color in one brand, can you switch over to another brand? My answer to that is yes. Only reason I slightly hesitate is because you have to know your machine. We use Janome machines. We both have the same embroidery machine, a 550E. That hasn't been a problem for us. But it's like sewing machines too. There are certain sewing machines only like certain brands.
Yeah, like for instance, this thread that I use, Most people will use a white bobbin in their bobbin, right? Like a very fine 60 weight thread or something like that. And we buy pre-wound bobbins that are like that from Montville.
Montville.
And use a white bobbin for most of our embroidery. But occasionally you might want to embroider with the same color on both sides. So this one I have successfully used in both the bobbin and the top thread. Whereas when I try to use Floriani, the bobbin won't work properly. So this one is a 40 weight thread, but I think it's slightly thinner than the Floriani thread.
Yeah. So that is something else, but that's starting now to go into another area that we're not going to talk about. In fact, we have a video about problems with embroidery machines or things like that. I'm not sure what it is. You have to do a search. You'll find it, but we did one quite a long time ago, actually, now.
I mean, you do need to, whatever embroidery machine you're using, you do need to find, they should be able to use different kinds of threads without too much of a problem. But some people will find that one thread might work a little better than another. So
now, one type of thread, though, that you might have problems with is metallics. Metallics actually have metal in them. They're very fragile. You might have to adjust some of the settings on your embroidery machine to use them effectively. You may not be able to use them at all. Now, I have used them fairly successfully on my machine, but there are tricks, and it's beyond the scope of today's
I've used them as well, and I haven't had too much problems with them.
And if you are going to use metallics, I'll give you one recommendation: don't buy cheap ones. In other words, I know you can go to the dollar store and you'll see a lovely display of a package for like $1.50, because nothing in the dollar store is $1 anymore, of these nice little spools of metallic threads. And you're thinking, well, I don't need to use that much anyways, so this would be nice and I'm saving a lot of money. Nope, it'll break.
Yeah,
I guarantee it. It will break.
For instance, this Floriani thread is $6.99 Canadian for a spool, but the Floriani metallic thread that they have is over $30 a spool.
Yeah.
And it's got less on it. I think it's got about 400 meters on it as opposed to the 1,000-meter spool.
Now, there is a brand of thread I found on Amazon, and it's called Brother, but it isn't Brother as in the sewing machine.
I think it's called Bro Thread.
Or Bro Thread, yeah.
It's not actually Brother.
Brother's Bro Thread, whatever. I see Bro, I thought Brother, whatever. Anyways, I bought a bunch of the metallics in it, and they actually do work okay. I've made them work. I don't usually use metallics, but I have used those, and they were okay. But they are not the best embroidery thread.
I bought metallic from Montville, where I buy my Super Beef thread, or Superb, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, the reason we call it Superb or Super B is because the way it's on the... If you look at this label, get it. See in the red, it says Super B. But is it Super B, or they just mean superb? Never know. Never had the answer to that.
Well, actually, I'm not 100% sure, but Dime sells a brand of thread that they call Exquisite, and I'm pretty sure it's the same thread. Yeah. But I'm not 100% sure. I can't be 100% sure, because all I did was I checked the color numbers. I compared the color numbers of the Superb and the Exquisite threads, and the color numbers exactly line up with each other as far as color shades go.
Because that's a good indication that they could be the same, because you will not find that in one brand of thread to another brand of thread they're going to use the same numbering scheme, because they don't. It's not universal. It's whatever the...
But I can't say that. I can't say that for sure.
We don't know that for sure.
I have no idea, but it just seems a little odd.
Well-kept secret.
But it's funny how it's named... This one's named Superb, and the other one's named Exquisite.
Yeah, so, maybe we're reading too much
into it. Or, we're reading too much into it.
But anyways, so this brings us to the point then, if you're getting started, and I've had this question asked many times, so... what would be a good starter pack of thread colors? Well, I wish there was such a thing as a starter pack of thread
Yeah.
colors, but I haven't seen anybody produce one. Floriani produces these boxes of threads that are on a sort of a theme. They're very, very expensive. There's, I forget how many are in a box, but
They're usually, actually, it used to be they had 120 in a box, but now I think they have 100 in a box.
it's like close to $500.
Yeah, or
over,
well,
depending.
Yeah, 100 in a box is $600 to $700.
Yeah. So yeah, that's enough to scare you especially when you're getting just started and all of this. So what do? Like, you saw my collection. Well, I'm one of those kind of people, I get something new, I have to have everything.
You don't really need that many colors.
No, that's what I was just going to say.
Yeah.
You don't need this many colors. So if people ask me what would I suggest, I would suggest, first of all, buy your primaries. Okay?
Or if you're not sure, actually what you can do is when it's a bit of a nuisance, but when you get an embroidery project and you see how many colors are in it, go out and buy those colors that you need for that embroidery project.
And then build up from there.
Two colors that you pretty much always have to have are white and black. So.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I'm just waiting.
What?
Oh, okay. I'm going to talk now about...
Now, Montville, a place that we go to, does sell a 50-pack of their favorite colors. So, and they're in the 1,000 meter size, and I think they're about, for the 50 threads, I think they charge about $85 for it,
which is really good.
A really good value pack.
And it gives you
a great starter pack.
It gives you a good selection. But back to what I was saying. I'm just waiting.
What?
Okay. Because every time I've been starting on this, you've jumped right in there.
Well, why not?
And all over my head.
You take so long to start.
I'm going to have you pick a finger. And you know which one. Okay. I would suggest 10, 15, maybe 20 colors. Start with primaries, not counting black and white. Start with, your red, your green, your yellow, your orange, your purple, that kind, your blue, that kind of thing. And that would be like 8. Okay. Then I would suggest, and make sure you got a black and a white as well. And then you might want to look at the possibility of getting the same colors again, but in a slightly different shade. And so if you did that, that's 16 to 20 threads there. You can pretty much do almost any pattern starting out with those. So that brings up the question of why then do these files, when you download them and you're looking at the documentation that came with them, and they list maybe 30, 40 different threads with it. Well, if you look at them, you could probably organize them out into your most standard colors. They're all shades. So there might be 4 different shades of green. There might be 3 different shades of blue, maybe 5 different shades of red, a couple of browns, things like that. And it's sort of like an artist with a paint palette. The way they design their patterns is they will have colors of threads over top of other colors to give a shading effect. What?
Bring our screen back to...
Oh, well, fine. Jeez. Director as well today. Wow. Writer, director, author. Gee, is there anything you can't do? Celebrity status. All right. So now I've lost my train of thought. Yeah, they mix them. They mix the colors to give more detail. So yeah, technically speaking, the more colors you have, the finer the detail is going to be in the piece that you're doing, if it calls for that. But you don't need to panic. You're still going to get something that's going to look really good.
And it depends on what you're doing. Some pieces that have like a ton of different colors in it, and another piece maybe if you did something like a monogram or something like that, you may only need a couple of colors. So,
and then over time you add to your collection, depending on what it is that you're sewing out. You pick up another file, you like it, you check your color supply to see if you have enough colors for it. Maybe you want to go and buy another couple of ones to supplement, that kind of thing. And over time you'll have quite a collection. Because do you go through this really fast? No, you don't. It's actually amazing how long one of these spools will last. And I'm a power user, and you know that. And I am not constantly replacing my threads.
Yeah, I was using a 1,000 meter one when we were doing Halloween houses, which is
Yep.
almost all black. They're all black, these Halloween houses. And I did all the Halloween houses, and basically I used one spool, but one spool of 1,000 meters. And it was a lot of thread. I was
Yeah.
surprised at how much one spool would do for you. So they would last a long time.
So yeah, they're expensive. Okay. In terms of, well, are they expensive? Think about this. I pay $15 to $16 for a 1,300 meters spool of Aurifil thread. This is $6.99 Canadian where I buy it, and that's the average price. I'm paying $6.99 for 1,000 meters of embroidery thread. So, in a sense, embroidery threads are actually a little cheaper.
I have actually used embroidery thread a couple of times on clothing just as an embellishment.
Yeah, and you can. There's nothing wrong with it. It'll work. It's not a problem.
In a regular sewing machine.
It just doesn't have the sheen, if you like the sheen. And the sheen does make it look nice. I will say that with it. So, in other words, I guess what I'm saying is, do you need to initially go out and spend a lot of money on all kinds of thread? No. Will you want to? Yes. But you don't have to do it all at once. Okay? All right. Now, how do you select your colors for a pattern? All right, when I say pattern or file, I'm referring to, you go online, you go to someplace like OESD or Scissortails or Urban Threads or whatever, Sweet Pea Designs, Designs by Juju. There's all kinds of them out there. Kiwi, Creative Kiwi, all these ones. And you pay for the file, you download it, put it into your embroidery machine, and the documentation that comes along with it will list all the colors that they want you to use and where to use them. Well, people get hung up on that. So they think their design's not going to turn out if they don't use exactly the colors that these companies that have created the file have recommended. Not so. You have to get out of the mindset that you have to take creative control. Don't let a machine tell you what to do. Manufacturers tell you what kind of thread to use and have lots of colors for it because they also sell thread. And they want you to buy their thread. So, for example, OESD sells Isocore thread, which I've never used Isocore, but to me, it's exactly the same as Floriani. And lots of colors for it. But that's how their patterns are designed. So what they do is they give you a number. And all the threads have a number on them that tell you.
Yeah, even mine have a number on them.
Madeira has a number. They all come with a number. And in these patterns, they will tell you, okay, you're using Isocore thread. You need number 1673 for this particular. And then you need this, and the other thing. Well, if you've got Isocore thread, and you've got those particular numbers, you're okay. But what if you don't? You've got Isocore thread, but you're missing some of those numbers. Go to the next shade. Go to the next number close to it. Or download off of you can get them for nothing. You download their color chart for all the different threads that are available from a particular company, and you can see. So let's say this was Isocore, or let's just say it's the Floriani, and it said that I needed, what's this one? Okay, I need it 368. I look in my drawer. I don't have 368, but I have 367. And they're both the same color group. They're both a blue. In fact, the difference between 368 and 367 is very, very subtle. So I just go for the one that's closest to what they're suggesting. Works fine. It's not a problem. But sometimes you hate the colors. Walter's famous for this. You never follow.
I practically never. I sit there and I go, actually, my machine would suggest a color, which my machine always suggests in Janome threads. And then I have a color conversion chart that goes to Floriani, and I see the color that comes up and it suggests one thing, but the one that shows up on my machine is a different one, right? So just as an example, one came up as sienna, and the color that matches sienna to the chart that I had was this one. right? So I embroidered with this one, and it worked out okay. It wasn't a problem. But the color that they actually wanted you to use was this one, quite a bit different, right? So I used this one for another time. I did the same pattern, and it worked out okay too. It was a subtle difference, but it actually didn't really make that big of a difference. So
in most cases, it is a subtle difference. Now, we're not talking though, okay, they're calling for a yellow, you decide to throw in a purple. Okay.
I mean, you can look at the pattern and say, I don't like those colors they're using in the pattern, and you substitute the colors you want for the pattern. The only thing is you got to try and make it so that where the lights are and the darks are they work out okay. But you can after a while you can get used to that. Like, I mean, it may tell me to use a bright red, and I don't want to use a bright red. I want to use a more subdued red, so I'll do that. I did this butterfly pattern a long time ago, and it had all these browns in it and stuff like that. I didn't like that, so I changed them all to like fuchsias and stuff like that.
And you can do that. It's you don't have to do. Look at what they're telling you. Think of it as a recommendation.
Yeah, like I downloaded a pattern for and it was shown on the pattern of a tiger in shades of gray, right? And when I brought the pattern up on my machine, it came out in shades of red. And I'm going, I don't want a red tiger, I want a black tiger. So I can substitute it with the black and gray threads instead.
Now, we've been talking about the machine telling you as well. And depends on your model of machine. I don't know if all machines work this way. I suspect they do. But Janome has, when you load in a pattern, here's a pattern, and it's suggesting that the one that's highlighted in white, the grape, that's what you see on the screen. That's that part of the design. And they're saying you should use grape for this. That's what they're calling grape. Well, maybe I don't like that, or maybe I don't have that shade. And in fact, I didn't use grape because this is actually one of the designs from the New Beauty table runner that I was showing you earlier when we first started. And I picked a different color, one that I liked better. It was a little different shade of a purple in it, not grape. But you'll notice here now, sometimes on this particular pattern that came from Sweet Pea, they're just giving you the name of the color. If other patterns, you will get a number sometimes. And you can set up your sewing machine so that it will convert whatever the pattern is calling for. So if, for example, I told you that OESD designs usually use isochore threads. Well, I have my machine set to look at that and convert it to what it thinks is the closest Janome color. Because Janome has embroidery threads too. But
that doesn't always work.
That doesn't always work because I don't use Janome thread. I use Floriani. But unfortunately, my machine in its settings, it has about 7 or 8 different brands of thread that you can default the machine to. But it doesn't have Floriani as one of their defaults.
And the brand that I use, since it's more of an obscure brand, nobody has that on there. So I have to I usually visually pick out my threads.
I do and I don't though, because I have, well, I'll show you here too, just before we move on. This is, you can go into this menu on your machine and see at the top says Janome polyester, and it's showing all the colors as what it thinks the Janome colors would be. Now in this particular one, it's not giving me numbers, and other designs, it would actually give me Janome numbers. This one, for some reason, that's not programmed into it with that. But it gives me a sense of what I want to use. But there's some colors on there I wouldn't use in this particular design. So how do I get around that? Well, Walter just does it, looks at it and goes, no, I want to use this color now. I like to have a bit of a guide situation, especially when you're using a pattern that might take 50 different color changes or something like that. So there is an app, but this is only for iPhones. I think it's only for iPhones, and it only works with Floriani. It gives you the equivalent from other threads in Floriani. And, oh, sorry, this is what I was talking about earlier, about you can set it up. See, I've defaulted mine to Janome polyester, but you can see they've got Gutermann, Robinson Ampton, Mettler, Jenny Haskins, etc., there. So Madeira is even there too. So if I clicked on one of those and went back to the other screen, it would give me what the color is in that line of thread. I don't use this very much. I always leave it defaulted at Janome because, yeah, I don't have these brands, and it doesn't have Floriani to it. But there is a app I use all the time. Now, I said you could go on to the manufacturer's website for the different threads you might be purchasing, and they usually have a thread chart showing you all the colors they have available. You can go to RNK as well, and you can download conversion charts for some of the threads as well. But this is a little app, and I find it makes life a little easier. But before I show you how it makes my life a little easier, I just want to explain this app does a little bit more than just give me the equivalent of what the Floriani thread would be. So it talks about thread types and colors. Color Matcher is the one I'm going to show you in a minute. It has suggestion where to buy their threads, sets. But what I really like about this is where it says shopping list. When I'm getting low on a particular color, I can go in, put it into the shopping list, and when I go to the store, I have the number of what I want in Floriani, and I just pick it up.
However, you have to be buying Floriani.
Yeah, I have to because this whole app is meant for Floriani threads.
Yeah.
There may be other ones out there for other threads. I'm not sure. I didn't look for them because I don't use those. The organizer is great because that's basically an inventory. I have all of my threads and how many I have of each spool in here. When I go into my shopping list, when I buy something, I can automatically add it to my organizer, and I can also remove as well. So it keeps me up to date as to what I've got in stock all the time. And then there's even this on the latest version of this, they have something called Ask Kaylee for questions about thread use. So basically it is a chat system, email system where if you got questions about threads, you can send off a message there. So, but the one I use the most is the Color Matcher. And here's how it works. You can convert from not just Janome threads, but if your system was set up with Mettler or something like that, you put in what your sewing machine, what I already showed you, is defaulted to. You set that, mine's defaulted to Janome, and then match to Floriani, it says. And you can have different weights of Floriani. I use the 40 weight, so I just leave it at that. So down here are the color numbers. These are Janome color numbers, and there's hundreds of them on here. You just scroll through, or you just plug in a number up here in the search. So you look at your sewing machine, at your machine, embroidery machine, and it says the color is number 263. Plug in 263 and hit return, and then you're going to get this screen. Let's say I put in 207 because that's the one that's here. It's a blue, Janome 207. Well, here is the equivalent numbers in Floriani, but you'll notice that they have various ones you can choose from, and the shades do change because those are based upon the Pantone color charts. Is how they do it.
See, I use this one as well when I use the Janome one, but my thread colors aren't on here. But what I do is I visually check what's there and sort of choose a thread color based on that.
Yeah. But that's what you can do here. You can look at the shades that come up, and there's more. This slides over. You get quite a few different ones. They're not an exact match, but this is where you start using your creative mind, and you decide, I really, the shade of blue that they're coming up with here, they show you this is the color that Janome. Down here are the suggestions that you could use instead of. And so like this one's fairly close, this one's fairly close, so I might go to those. But if I don't have those, I'll scroll through and find something I do have. And I know it's in the same color family, so it's probably going to work.
Or
okay.
you can do what I do and just visually look at the color and say, okay, I have a thread that's sort of that color, so I'll use it.
Yeah. Now, one tip, if you're going to do this kind of thing with it, have a pad of paper beside you. Write down the number that the machine or the pattern is coming up with. Write down the color you're actually going to use. Write down the number. Keep that. Keep it with the documentation that you printed out when you bought the file. And because if you want to do that pattern again in the future, you don't have to go hunting for your colors again. You've got them already listed. Is this going to take you a little time? Yes.
Especially if you've got a lot of colors.
But it's going to keep you organized. It's going to keep you from getting confused. And yeah, it's worth the effort, okay? Especially if you're doing something that's a fairly involved piece. If you're just doing a simple little monogram, no big deal. It's one color, pick it. It's red, it's blue, it's green, whatever. That kind of thing. But on more complicated ones, you'll want to keep a list of this kind of thing. I guess the bottom line of all this about picking the colors so far that we've said is don't let somebody else tell you what you should use. You can break away from what even the designer that designed the pattern is doing. You can break away from it. It's not going to kill you to do that. It's your own. You make it your own. And then sometimes there seems to be that, we've already said this, several shades of the same color in a pattern, and you're probably going, well, that's a waste, especially if you have to keep changing your colors. If you're using a machine that only can sew one color at a time, you're not using one of the like 7 needle or 14 needle or whatever industrial style machines where, you know, you get them all loaded up and away it goes kind of a deal. You're going to get tired very fast changing if there's a lot of color changes.
And it's time consuming.
It's very time consuming. So, you know, you got to make a value judgment. It calls for 2 shades of green. You know, 2 shades of blue. Well, here's 2 shades of blue. They're definitely very different. But we don't have anything right here. Well, let me just grab out of my storehouse colors. That blue. Yeah, okay. This is 367. This is 366. Can you see a difference? There is. There's a slight little difference to it. One's leaning a little bit more to the purple spectrum. But in a big piece that you're doing, are you going to notice the difference? Probably not. So sometimes what I do is I look at how many color changes are going to be, and I look to see how close are the color changes. And if I figure it's not a big enough variation to make any difference, I'll just use the one color for those 2 or even 3 colors. Because to be honest, having to change the thread out on the embroidery machine, that's the most tiresome part.
Especially
of embroidery.
Sometimes when you are embroidering something, occasionally they'll have one that only has like 5 stitches or 10 stitches of a different color, and you think to yourself, well, I'm not changing the color.
No, because you know the human eye can only pick up so many different variations in color. There are certain animals in the animal kingdom that can see a lot more in the color spectrum than we can as humans. So unless you're going to run out and show it to that animal, I wouldn't worry about that. Don't get bogged down with all of that. I have heard people say, oh, I'd really love to do that particular pattern, but there's just so many different colors.
Or I've heard somebody say, well, like when you buy, what is it, embroidery online, buy something and it shows you all the isocord colors to use. And they go, well, I don't know where to buy isocord thread. Well, you don't have to buy isocord thread.
You don't have to
use your own thread.
That's right. But what the whole idea is of the different colors is shading. That's what you'll get. Now, like Walter said, it may only do 3 stitches. Well, that's not a major shading difference on it. But if it's going to do a lot, then you may want to make the color variation a slightly different with that, because it is a shading thing, and it'll just make it maybe that part of the design pop a little bit more. But this comes with experience. You'll figure that out. Okay, so here's another thing. This is more problem solving. So away I'm going. I'm got all my colors picked out. I'm busily sewing along. I've been into this design now for about half an hour and whatnot. I've made umpteen million different color changes. And so in the process of doing another color change, I've used the wrong color. I went, oh shoot. That's
And it
not.
starts stitching out, and you look at it and you go, oh, I picked the wrong color.
So do you throw it out? Are you lost? Can't do anything? No. Do not take it out of the hoop. You can backtrack on your machine, and start that row again, or that part of the design again, but this time put in the right color. And yes, you are going to sew over the old color. And does it work? Yes, it does. Your machine can handle multiple layers of thread. And in fact, that's how embroidery designs are designed. They have multiple layers of thread on them. So yeah, you don't have to scrap it. I've done that many times where, oops, and you're going to say, well, yeah, but it was a really dark color, and I actually meant to use a much lighter color. So won't that bleed through? No.
It might a little bit, depending on how dense the threads are, but
not enough to really
but
give
not
you...
enough that
No.
it would cause a problem.
No. And I've done it many times because it's very easy to get yourself screwed up. Well, don't abandon it. It's no, all is not lost. Just sew over the top of it.
And not only that, when you're looking at your embroidery machine, you're embroidering, you've got your nose right over top of the embroidery. Then once you've used the embroidery and it's a few inches further away, even if there's a little bit of thread showing through from the other color from a distance, you would never notice it.
And here's a hack. Okay. I don't recommend using it on a regular basis, but okay. Let's say you finished the whole design, you took it out of your hoop, and there's one little spot that you've noticed is definitely and very obviously the wrong color. Fabric markers. Recolor it with fabric markers. You just touch it up. And you want to know something? It works. I have done that. Nobody ever notices it. Unless, now I'm not talking about a whole section this big around in your embroidery, but
occasionally your bobbin thread might come up a little bit,
yeah,
or something like that. And so
just touch it up with a fabric marker.
Yeah.
Because one thing, well, fabric markers are usually washable, but you're probably not going to wash an embroidered piece. I mean, maybe if it's on a shirt, you would, or something like that. But fabric markers, heat set it after you've put it on, let it dry, heat set it, and you should be good to go. I've done it. I don't like to use it often, but in a pinch, it works. So that's a little hack for you with that. Okay. Anything else you want to say about colors?
No, just, don't get too hung up on the colors, and sometimes you need to change the colors for your own taste as well.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to use your own taste.
Especially, I mean, it's different if you're doing like a photographic type picture, like of an animal or something like that where you need it to look more like the animal. But I mean, if you're doing a pattern like Steve's New York Beauty or whatever, if you don't like the colors that they're using in the pattern, alter it to the colors you want to use it.
Yeah. And the other thing too is you can have a little fun with this. There's nothing saying that you can't have a pink striped tiger.
Yeah.
Like, think outside of the box.
Like, I mean, if you're embroidering on black or something, and there's a lot of black in your, if you've got a black outlined figure, right, and it's a stick drawing or something like that, and want to put it on black fabric, there's nothing saying you can't change the color of your embroidery from black to white.
Yeah. But I'm also saying you can be unconventional too. Yeah. It's like the kid who colors the grass blue and the sky green. It's art.
Yeah.
So, have fun with it. I've done that with a few things because they were whimsical characters anyways, like gnomes. Nobody said a gnome had to be a certain color. I can do a gnome in any color I want to. Nobody said that I had to try and get flesh tones exactly in flesh tones for it. Maybe I want to make somebody a green alien.
Or maybe one of them have brown skin.
Maybe. Yeah, actually, that's true. That's important. That's actually a very serious thing.
Yeah, I know.
You know, because depending
I
on
mean, you may be your personal background is non-white skin, and the thing is showing is a white skin
like Santa Claus.
thing, and you want to change your skin color to match your own. So
There's nothing saying that Santa Claus can't be black or brown or purple. You can make Santa any color that suits you, okay, with it. So the bottom line is think outside of the box. Don't let the manufacturers of designs and the manufacturers of threads and the manufacturers of embroidery machines dictate to you your taste. You make it work for you, whatever way. So I think that's it for us today about color. This was Walter's idea. I know the fan club will be idolizing you, bowing down. We are not worthy. We aren't worthy, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Okay. Hope everybody has a good week, and we'll see you for the next episode of So Chatty. Say goodbye, Walter.
goodbye, Walter.